Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. Welcome to Day 602. Lindsey Graham introduced a bill that would ban abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy across the entire country. While Graham's measure stands no chance of being passed, it comes less than 2 months before the midterm elections, when some Republican candidates are walking back their own support for a total ban. 56% of voters say abortion will be very important to their midterm votes. Additionally, Mitch McConnell all but rejected the measure, saying that questions about the bill should be directed to Graham and that most Republican senators, quote, prefer this be handled at the state level, end quote. John Cornyn added, quote, that wasn't a conference decision, it was an individual senator's decision, end quote. The White House, meanwhile, criticized the bill as, quote, wildly out of step with what Americans believe, end quote. Moving on, inflation rose 8.3% in August compared with a year ago. While inflation is down from an 8.5% jump in July and a 4-decade high of 9.1% in June, it's at a slower pace than anticipated, given the recent decreases in the price of gasoline and other forms of energy. Economists expected consumer prices to rise by about 8% annually in August. In response, stock markets posted their worst one-day performance since June 2022. The Federal Reserve, meanwhile, is expected to raise interest rates another 0.75 percentage points next week to slow the economy even further. The Census Bureau reported that from 2019 to 2021, real median household income decreased by 2.8%. Meanwhile, at least 97 current members of Congress reported trades by themselves or family in stocks or other financial assets that intersected with the work of the congressional committees on which they sit and serve. Over a 3-year span, more than 3,700 trades were reported by lawmakers from both parties that posed potential conflicts of interest between their public responsibilities and their private finances. More than half of them sat on committees that potentially gave them insight into the companies they reported buying or selling. Moving on, a potential national railroad strike threatens to further disrupt supply chains and cause billions of dollars in economic damage, forcing the Biden administration to develop contingency plans to keep critical supply chains operational as labor talks continue. Railroads and unions have until Friday to resolve a labor dispute when a federally mandated 30-day cooling-off period ends. The White House is also considering the use of emergency powers to ensure that essential supplies like food, energy, health-related products to consumers, and chlorine for wastewater treatment plants can be delivered in the event of a strike. At issue is a dispute over wage increases and better health coverage between railway carriers and 2 unions, which represent 57,000 conductors and engineers. The railroads account for about 28% of U.S. freight. Meanwhile, more than 15,000 nurses in Minnesota went on strike after months of contract negotiations failed to produce a new deal that addresses understaffing and overworking. The strike against 16 hospital systems is the largest strike of private sector nurses in U.S. history. And finally, the National Archive says it's not certain whether all of Trump's presidential records are in its possession even after the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago club. This according to the House Oversight Committee. In a letter to the acting archivist, Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney asked the archives to seek a personal certification from Donald Trump that he has surrendered all presidential records that he illegally removed from the White House after leaving office. Maloney added, quote, I also ask that the agency conduct an urgent review of presidential records recovered from the Trump White House to assess whether presidential records remain unaccounted for and potentially in the possession of the former president. On August 24th, the archives informed the committee that the agency did not know whether all of Trump's White House records were accounted for. And in the polls, The Hill says just 47% of Americans can name all 3 branches of government, while 25% couldn't name a single branch. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.